chose to go that way. It seemed he was living by sight and not by faith. I think that's the key thing we can take away from there. And now we're seeing the results of what happens when we live by sight and not by faith. So if we pick up on chapter 19, I believe we left off on verse 6 last week. Now, if you remember, the two guys we know are angels came into the city, and Lot, hanging out in the front square, said, "Hey, come stay with me." And they're like, "No, we got business to do." And he's like, No, come on, prepare a feast." And then what happened next? Anyone?
Like after he invited the angels?
Yeah, after he brought the two guys into his house.
Oh, the people wanted to know them ardently.
And I'm gonna have somebody grab this mic. I need you guys to talk loud. Right. So all the guys, right, of all the ages, came up to the house. Here, I'm gonna give you this, Anthony. I'm gonna make you're younger than me. Get over here and get it. Come on. I get to say that now.
Yeah.
I got people younger than me.
Yeah.
So do you remember, Anthony, just out of curiosity, do you remember what Lot had said to the guy? Like, so the banging on the door, there's all of the men of the entire city, and young and old, and they're banging on the door, and they're like, "Send those guys out that we might have sex with them."
Yeah.
What did Lot do?
Went out, offered his daughters.
Oh yeah, that's right. He offered his two daughters. Is it on?
It's on.
Wait, so Lot offered his two daughters that didn't know no man because he wanted to protect the guys, or to protect the two angels.
I can say, like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if that's something that I can be a part of, like sending my kids out. That's just craziness to me. But anyways, so that's where we left off. And so we're picking up on chapter 19, verse 6. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. See, now I have two daughters who have not known a man. Please, let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof." I understand hospitality, and I also understand the way of the times. If you invited someone into your home, you were 100% responsible for their health, their safety, their livelihood. The moment that you said, "Hey, you come into my house and stay with me," you were basically saying, "Hey, I've got you. I've got you covered in every way, fashion, or form. I will protect you, I will feed you, I will clothe you, I will make sure that you have everything you need to survive and probably more." And this is how they did it, right? We maybe not so much these days. You know, like we get those guests into our house and maybe overstay their proposal. All right, you gotta go. But no, but that was Lot's mindset behind there. But you know, even understanding the way it is for the time, I don't know that that's something that I do personally. I know it's not. I would never give up my children to protect like someone else. If anything, I'm taking people out to protect my children. But there's that, right? So verse 9, and they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." I don't know how you can deal worse with Lot than with them, but so they pressed hard against the man Lot, right? This is a really twisted city. I mean, not only are these guys like, "Oh, there's two beautiful men in that house, and we want them. We're all going to take them." They're ready to take them by force. And I can't even imagine the depravity of an entire city. Like, if we're talking about on the lowest scale, 40,000 inhabitants between the two of them, 20,000, we'll say half of them are men. 10,000 people surrounding this house. Like, just this all of these guys, just give us these guys so we can do with them what we please. The depravity of this place. The disgust. And this guy Lot comes in trying to judge and act like he's better than us and tell us what's right and wrong and sit in our gateways and try to tell us all this. How dare get him? We're going to treat him worse. I can only imagine what that might be if they wanted to take these men and have their way with them carnally. What is the worst that they're going to do to Lot? You know? And so, they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them, pulled him into the house, and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. These guys were so obsessed with their physical desire that they had been struck and blind, and they were still trying to get to what they wanted. They wore themselves out trying to find the door. You know, Joe, it's really hard not to preach and just teach on Sunday mornings.
It's a tough line to cross.
Especially when you take into consideration situations like this. They wanted what they wanted so badly, their fleshly desire. They had acquired a physical ailment, and yet they still pursued it to the point of exhaustion. That's just like a whole, we could go all over the place with that one.
Same thing today.
Same thing with so many things. Oh man, my page changed on me, and all of a sudden I see Ben Abimelech. I'm like, no, hey, we're not pronouncing those words yet. Let me get back over here. But the men reached out their hands and they pulled Lot into the house, and with them they shut the door, and they struck the men who were with the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. Then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? I wonder what would have happened with Lot and his family had he not reached out to him and hospitality. I mean, I don't think he would have known it was coming. Right? He would have just been swept up in the whole thing. Like the blessings of extending hospitality, you know, of being a good person. Like we can't, a good person's not going to get us to heaven, but being a good person and showing good virtue and good moral values in a world around him does the complete opposite. And even in the midst of it, the hardship that he must have endured in doing so, right? These guys, but standing firm in doing so anyways and receiving the blessings of God. I won't preach for you, I'll just throw that idea out at you. But then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here, son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And once again, where did the outcry come from? Well, I mean, if these guys are doing this to the people coming into the city, I'm assuming the outcry might be coming from anyone who has come in contact with this area.
Oh, yeah. And it's possible there may have been other people in the town who are actually even more righteous than Lot,
Yeah.
but not part of Lot's family.
But
It's hard to know.
yeah, and we don't know who else was in the city just enduring the torture. It's really what it is. You know, if you were born into that city, you're just like born knowing that this was wrong, and but it just keeps happening around you, and you have no way of like. I can only imagine what that outcry is, but you have to understand that the outcry was so bad. Whether it was the outcry of the land, whether it was the outcry of the people, the outcry of the soldier, if it was the outcry was so much that God said, we've got to do something about it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, right? Which I'm assuming, right? He said, who had married his daughters and said, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But his son-in-laws, he seemed to, but to his son-in-laws, he seemed to be joking. And now take this into consideration, right? He allowed his daughters to marry into people from the city that did not know his God. So of course he's like, oh, that God that you speak of. Okay, he's gonna destroy our city. Yeah, right. We've been here for a long time doing this and nobody's stopped us yet. Now you want to tell me about this God? Whatever. And like so much of this, like, I mean, realize how far we're talking about. What, about 1400 BC? Around 1600 to 1700 years ago, potentially. And it sounds like I'm talking about today. 1700 years ago, and we've come so far with so much and so much everything, and we're sitting here talking about it today, and we're talking about what it feels like. Like I said, it's hard to
Well, the naysayers have been around for a while.
how many people like think you're joking when you talk about God and salvation?
Yeah, sometimes they do laugh.
And especially when we start talking about, you know, the judgment and the stuff that happens in Revelation. You know, like talk about the tribulation and the beast system and the Antichrist, and they're like, you crazy Christians with your big sky daddy. You know? The naysayers.
In social media, when I post little stories, what I do sometimes is say, well,
Sorry, I can't hear you. We got the floor. It's a little hard.
It's on.
in social media, when I feel like I want to get out something that, you know, would be evangelism, would be reaching people, sort of forewarning them of what could happen if they die and they're not saved. And so what I'll do sometimes is just defer to someone else. People like it when you talk about famous people and things that happen to them. So you have this famous musician, let's say, who was, kind of living a dark spirit life, and all of a sudden he's telling the interviewer that he finally found God and got away from witchery and it saved his daughter. And so I will get comments from that sort of a reference. So it's not me saying it, it's this famous person they're interested in, so they sort of get, you know, drawn into it. And so the message still reaches them.
Right.
But they don't have to criticize me because I wasn't there, I didn't say it, so it's kind of
Well,
hard for them to attack me.
So can I tell you something? We have to be able to take this. We have to not be afraid of what people are going to say. We have to be able to stand firm in Christ. I say this because it said if you set me before men, if you deny me before men, but at the same time, that's what we're called to do. We're called to be persecuted by the world around us while we're sharing the gospel and living it.
Some weeks persecution just make that easy.
Yeah, no, and I get that, but we can't allow ourselves to be afraid of the world. We can't allow ourselves to be afraid of the world around us to the point where we're not standing up for Christ in every moment. And you're still standing up for Christ, right? But I just like, as far as the idea, like, I don't want to be criticized for my faith, then maybe your faith's not strong enough. And I'm not talking about you, but I'm just saying if you don't want to be criticized for your faith, if you don't want somebody talking about you because you're serving God, then maybe you're not really serving Him. Maybe that part where, you know, it says all things became new, maybe not all things have become new because there's an issue there if you're not willing to stand firm on the solid ground in Christ, speak up and allow the world to criticize you.
I'm going to point out that Revelation says, no, not Revelation, I think I can't verse, says, as it was in the days of Lot, so will be in the days of the coming of Christ. And when you look around what's happening in the world, our world, in America today, with all the homosexual, sexual deviant I look at these things as a sign of time that, we're close.
Well, and before, we used to have like, oh, you know, it's here, and it's here, and it's here. But these days, it's here. It's everywhere. It's not just like, oh, they're doing it up there, they're doing it over. No, it's everywhere. It's in your face. It's, you know, it's coming against you. It's coming against your children. It's coming against everything that you value, because that's what the enemy's doing.
Well, the enemy also came up with this idea of the gender confusion. So now you've got the little ones that don't know whether they're boy or they're girl, and then you have court cases where mom said, I want my girl to be a boy, and then dad says, oh, and so it's dragged into courts.
And when you have a Supreme Court justice that cannot define a woman, if she is a woman, and her decisions, she goes away with all evil. That's where we're at. It's just, the Bible says that when people call good, evil, and evil good, it's toward the end of time. And we're there.
So, and speaking of women, I think we're going to find out what happened to lots of women here in Rome. Right? And the idea here, I'm thinking, like, we're seeing the sons-in-law thinking that, you know, it's a joke. We still really haven't determined where Lot had gotten his wife from. We talked about that a little bit, but when we see him going into the city, if we see him with his household and his shepherds and stuff, I don't believe it mentions the wife. And I believe that Lot potentially had gone into the city and taken a wife from the people of the city. And
Since we don't really know a lot
We-
about it. We know that he came.
we don't know a lot.
We know, yeah, we don't know about it.
We just
We
know
know
that
that he
Joseph
came
walked.
with Abram out of Ur of the Chaldees. So he could have been married in Haran or other places like that. We just don't know.
We don't know. There's a lot we don't know.
But we do know what happened to the result.
But what we do know is, verse 15, when the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. And him and his wife and 2 daughters, out of that entire household that we talked about going into Sodom with him, and his sons-in-laws, and he said, go out and talk to your people. Don't let your people know. And Lot managed to pull 3 people out of that whole situation. And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought him out and set him out of the city. Did you catch that though?
They drug him.
It wasn't that he left. They drug him out. They said, all right, go. Like,
And he was probably trying to figure out what to take with him.
well, and here's Lot.
Oh,
He-
back for his trip.
He just witnessed the power of these 2 guys, right? He just seen them make all of these guys go blind. And now they're saying, it's time to go. We're going to destroy the city. And he's just lingering. I might have been gone the night before. I like to be a little prepared. I'm like, I don't know how many people are actually getting out of the city. There might be a traffic congestion. You know what? Let's get everything we need down and now. I'm out of here. Like, you guys are leaving at 5 in the morning. I'm trying to leave at 3. You know? But he lingered. They had to grab him by the hands. Not just him. They had to grab the hands of him, his wife, his 2 daughters, and say, "Come on, let's go."
Well, people don't want to have to flee from their homes suddenly.
Or maybe they just don't want to let go of what they have. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to let go of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to let go of their physical possessions,
Yeah.
right?
You have to leave my home.
It'd be tough.
My kids didn't believe me, still ran out the door. Listen,
How many people
it's a tough
how many
challenge.
people stay holding on to earthly things all the way to their end?
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean,
people with the
while
fighters break out.
there's somebody
Some
right
people
there
smoke until
telling
they're
them,
out.
yeah, while there's somebody right there telling them about Christ, telling them about salvation, telling them about the love of God, just driving their way right to the dead end road, you know, to the end, right? Or staying stagnant. You've heard the message your whole life. You're like, yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll do it. You know, I've got to clean up my life before I come to God. I was one of those. I did that before. I couldn't get clean. So they grabbed him by the hand, right? Brought him out. He said, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. The mercy of God. The Lord being merciful to him. It's kind of like, I told you to go. Why are you still standing here? Oh, come on. How many times have you done that in your life?
Was it the elders that dragged him out?
Who's the elders?
I don't know.
It was the angel.
The angels.
Oh, that was the angels. I understand.
There's the two angels.
The two, oh, right,
Yeah.
okay.
So it came to pass, when they had brought them outside, that he said, escape for your life, do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed. Very specific instruction. Then Lot said to them, please, no, my lord. Indeed, now your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have increased your mercy, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. To me, that sounds like, you want me to go that far? Or how about, God, you want me to do what? You want the mountains? What if the bear eats me? Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. What if the robbers get me? What if God told you to do something and you went out and did it exactly the way that he told you to, and you received all the full blessings from that? What if? What if God called you to go out and do something, and you, in your fear, remembered that God's strength is perfected in your weakness, gained some courage, and went out and did it anyways, and it made a vast harvest of people that came to Christ? What if you ignored the what ifs and you did what he said? Lot said, what if? Again, I can't go down. There's some evil's going to take over me. It's like, and evil overtake me and I die. And see, now this city near, it's enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Please let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. You see those mountains way in the distance? You see where you're calling me to go to and be where I'm supposed to be? I can't do that. That's too far from me. But you see this small journey? These little tiny steps? And it's interesting too, because like, I've been locked in this situation. I'm not going to get too much into it. But it's so much easier to take the easier step than it is to go and be fully with God. Because when you go to do what holy God has called you to do, it requires full faith. It requires fully allowing God to guide you and direct you and saying, okay, God, you're in charge. What would you have me do? I don't want to do that. I don't agree with it. But you have called me to do it, so I will do it. If you said that this is what I'm supposed to do, then I know I can do it. Or I'm going to die trying. Yeah. There's a scene in the New Testament where this guy is in the garden. And he's kind of stressing about what's going to happen next. You guys know what I'm talking about? He said, if there's any way for this cup to pass from me. Right? If there's any way that I don't have to go through this, God, if there's any way that I don't have to go through this, Dad, if there's any way that I don't have to, I know what's coming, I know what you have, if there's any way, but what's he say? What's the answer to that? He said, is it not a little one, and then my soul shall live? And he said to him, see, I have favored you concerning this thing also, and that I will not overthrow this city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. He said, all right, hurry up and get out of here. But go quick, because I got stuff to do. I mean, there's some mercy right there. There was mercy time and time again. There was mercy when they agreed to go into his household. Remember, originally they said, no, we got to stay in the city square. We got something to do. They knew what that city was about. Could you imagine how that scene would have went down if Lot had not invited them in? I mean, for one, we wouldn't be talking about the story right now. But they would have been in the open city square with all of these 10,000 plus possibly men of all ages wanting to know them carnally. Maybe the city would have just been wiped out right there. Maybe that was the plan. Maybe. We don't know. But what we do know is that they came into Lot's house. And they showed them mercy by coming into his house, realistically, if you think about it, because then Lot got to know them, and Lot was saved, his family was saved. Anyways, we haven't got to that part. But then, even in the midst of all of that, after witnessing everyone go blind, after witnessing this whole situation, hey, it's time to go. Come on, Lot, get everybody started to go to the hospital. Like they showed mercy again and had to grab him by the hand, his wife, his kids, and drag him out of the city. And then go. No, here. Mercy again. Lots of mercy. It's so good. It's really good. Mercy is mercy. But then he tells them, go to Zoar, right? You got to hurry with that because I've got stuff to do. And we continue on. It says, then the sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on. Did I miss something? Yes, I did. Yeah, right now. Right there. No, we're good. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So he overthrew those cities, all the plain, and the inhabitants, and the cities, and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. So I think we talked about this when you go over to that area today. Barren, wasteland, nothing can grow. And they started digging. They just started finding all kinds of sulfur. And it's almost like it was raining down little balls of sulfur.
Pure sulfur.
Pure. Like, this is really
Not
amazing
found on
because
earth.
they actually have this area over there that they call Lot's Wife. I don't know if you've seen that stone. And I don't know if it's Lot's Wife. It's interesting that it's in the area. It kind of looks like
She looked back.
looks like somebody that looked back and got taken out. And maybe, maybe it's not, but maybe it's a reminder. As we see archaeologists digging here and doing all of these things, maybe it's a reminder that these aren't just fairy tale stories in a book. Like, this is history. Like, we are studying actual history. These things happen. When you go to the area where these things are, and you see that it's all sulfur, and it's just wiped out exactly the way God says it is in the Bible, like, this is history that we're studying.
Sulfur, not this word.
And Lot's wife. I think sometimes it's really hard to let go of the past. It's really hard to let go of things behind us. And, speaking from, a conversion point of view, right? Sometimes we come to God or He's called us out through His mercy to get to our little Zoar, and we're on our way, and we look back. And we look back and we see something that entices us a little bit more than the promise of God. And why? Because our faith isn't completely full yet. One of the gifts of the Spirit is faith and increased faith. You know, I think so much about the guy who says, yes, I believe, but pray for my unbelief. We can get caught up in things that we might be so faithful and so strong in our faith that we don't realize our weaknesses. Lot's wife's weakness was she didn't want to let go of what was behind her. All she could see is that life that she loved, that life that she enjoyed, that life that was physically appealing. To what? To go run away with just the four of us and to the city where I have nothing. And there's my to a pillar of salt. And Abram went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. Then he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain. And he saw and behold the smoke of the land which went up like the smoke of a furnace. Annihilated. The whole land smelled like just burning. We know what that's like in California, huh? I've been smelling it lately in the air. Have you ever? So NASA has these really interesting satellite maps, and they have. If you go on there, one of the filters, one of the things that you can look at is the wildfires and the fires globally, and it'll show you like where they're all burning and how much they're burning. And then another map shows you the smoke and where the smoke and blooms and all of these things. And it's really interesting because when we have our wildfires here in California, our smoke goes all the way to the East Coast. It covers, like there's been times I've been watching it on this map, and it's literally covered more than 2/3 of America with smoke from California. And so I can only imagine what Abram was witnessing right there firsthand. Have you ever been close to the wildfires or anything when like Cajon passes and how insane it is, right? I mean, coming up on it, you can just see the smoke billowing, the black, the gray, all the stuff going on. And, you know, you live in California long enough, you start to know when they have the area contained by the color of the smoke and what's going on over here. You're like, oh no, they're still finding it over here, but they're getting it down over here. I can tell that the smoke's whiter. It's looking. Abram looks out and just. You guys have a little bit of an idea of what Abram might have been seeing. Now, mind you, all of this area was a fertile land. It wasn't the desert idea that we know today. I mean, there was lions and tigers and bears on high, and there were trees, and there was vegetation. I mean, not so much in Sodom and Gomorrah after this, but it wasn't just the city that was on fire. It was that whole entire surrounding area and all of the vegetation, and everything just like a great big furnace into the sky. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abram and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. Here's where it gets even more interesting, right? Then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains. After all that, and he ended up right where he was supposed to be. I hate. Sometimes I just hate how much this stuff like me. It applies to your life and like. I read that story before I did it. Anybody know that? Now, anyway. Then Lot went out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him. For he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. And he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. Now the firstborn said to the, well, let's go back. Okay. He said, go to the mountain. No, I can't do that, but I can do this. Gets to where I can do this, and what happens?
What happened there?
Something scared him.
Well, yeah, they were 12
their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. I know the Bible is true,
You know,
but
I
I
thought the thing at the beginning of that,
Huh?
if those two are the first born, then how did his other two daughters marry into husbands and married?
no. There was only 2 daughters.
Yeah, there's only 2 daughters that he
But
claimed they
you
were
just said he had
virgins.
son-in-law.
Yes,
The Bible
he-
says he had son-in-law.
Yeah, it does say that he had son-in-laws.
So,
But I assume that's a lie. He told everybody when he said he would get his virgin daughters. Because I have that marked and that's something that always puzzled me why he
So
had
wait, but
son-in-laws.
hold on, let me point this out. Let me show this to you though. So the moment of betrothal, they became son-in-laws. However, there is a process to the marriage and there is a waiting period. We kind of talked about this a little bit. So they still being in Lot's household means that they were definitely betrothed to these 2 men. However, they may not have come together yet because of the time of preparation in between.
That's possible, however, you also have, the 2 daughters that were out with them, talking about the firstborn. It doesn't mean that she was the first child. It means of those 2 kids that were there, she was the oldest. So they knew they had 4 or 5 daughters, and then the ones that went out with the angels, she was the oldest of the 2. And, they made this decision to have sex with their dad and his offspring, which is, of course, not what God had planned. But some of these kids came under tribes of people.
It's interesting when you see where all of the people who became acquainted with God, with the Israelites, come from. And it all goes back to Ham and Canaan. But from there, it's mind blowing when you study this and find these things out. But yeah, so it's very possible that Lot had a lot more sons and daughters. It's possible that he had more family there with him. But what we do know, we don't know the extent of the size of his household or how many daughters he had, but what we do know is that his wife and 2 daughters came with him. And he went to go speak to the sons-in-laws, and we can suggest that he didn't have any sons, and that he only had daughters because it doesn't mention going to speak to your son. But we don't know. So, but we do know that he went and told the son-in-laws, and they all thought it was a joke.
Well, we kind of know that he didn't have any sons because why would they preserve his father's lineage?
Well, now at this point, even if he did, everyone's gone.
Yes.
It's like prior, like if there were, there's not. So either way, it's really kind of crazy because
One of the things about the Bible, it shows a lot of things that we would think would be wrong or involved with. All throughout the Bible, it displays the different things of humanity. Good, bad, and all over the world. Out of all that, God still brings about things that happen, like Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers, all those things happen. It's not logical in terms of how they think. God brings it really fast.
I missed the least of all. But we're all done. Somebody would like to pray us out? Any volunteers? So we're going to pick up on verse, I was going to say verse 34,